Hello, everyone, and welcome to this 2021. My name is Giovanni Troiano, and together with Matthew, Riddhi, Fey, and Casper, we want to present to you the paper called Are We Now Post-COVID? In this paper, we wanted to explore post-COVID futures using a speculative research method. And to do so, we gamified a story completion method. This work was mainly motivated by two questions that I'm pretty sure crossed the mind of everybody, especially when we were deep in the COVID pandemic. What will a post-COVID future look like? So what's it for us in the future after this pandemic? And also, when are we post-COVID? And we wanted to inquire, when do people think that we're post-COVID? Are we ever going to be post-COVID? Is there a future for us where we will be rid of this kind of disease in particular? When we performed this study, we were still deep in the pandemic and these questions were still very much alive in the mind of people. So that was also a favorable time to perform this kind of speculative research. Our work was also motivated by the question that Peter Delsgaard and colleagues posed in HCI, which is, what can we do right now as an HCI community to help advance the scientific discourse that surrounds COVID? In that respect, Peter Delsgaard and colleagues proposed that we use methods that are well known in HCI, such as design fictions, participatory design, or speculative research, and involve the people with whom we will share a post-COVID future in a shared effort to try to envision, speculate about, and possibly reshape the future post-COVID that we're going to live together. Here, we take up the methodological challenge proposed by Delsgaard and colleagues and combine gamification and story completion method for a new speculative research method that we use here to inquire how people speculate about and socially construct a notion of post-COVID future. Before we introduce the study to you, we want to clarify what the concepts gamification and story completion methods mean for those of you in the audience who might not be familiar with these terms. Gamification's guiding idea is to use elements of game design in non-game contexts, products and services to motivate desired behaviors. This is how gamification has been defined by Sebastian Detruding in 2012. On the other hand, the story completion method is a psychoanalytic method where patients are asked by therapeutic practitioners to complete, namely to write, stories based on existing story stems. For instance, previously in HCI, papers about sex robots have been published, where the authors asked their participants to complete a story stem about Morgan encountering a sex robot in the future. The story stem was very simple. It was just saying, Morgan is about to encounter a sex robot. What happens next? And the participants had to write the rest of the story based on this simple story stem. We embedded 5 of these story stems in our gamified story completion method game called What's Next. To design and develop this game took approximately 3 months, and we did it using the online platform StudyCrafter, the same platform that we used to carry out our online speculative research. In our study, we asked 37 participants to play the game What's Next and complete 5 story stems to speculate about futures post-COVID. Participation in the study was voluntary. 57% of our participants were between 25 and 30 years of age. 19% were younger, while 24% were older. 62% were employed, while 19% were students. 5% did not want to answer the question. 57% of our participants self-identified as male, 38% as female, while 5% preferred not to disclose their gender. Ethnicity and nationality were heterogeneous as the study was performed worldwide. In What's Next, our participants were asked to speculate about post-COVID future through the perspective of Sal, a genderless protagonist. Participants would be presented with a new scenario and a new story stem to complete as a day in the life of Sal unfolds. For instance, participants would be asked to speculate about what Sal sees out of the window in a post-COVID future while sipping a coffee in the morning. Then after that, Sal receives a call and then participants would be asked, who called Sal, and what is the content of their conversation? After the phone call, Sal goes outside, and then participants would be asked to describe what Sal does, or sees, or hears while outside. Then Sal goes to a park and receives a notification on the smartphone, and participants would be asked to describe what is the content of the notification that Sal received. Finally, Sal goes back home and after dinner decides to write a Facebook post, and then participants would be asked to describe what is the content of this Facebook post that Sal writes. We've analyzed the results of the game using thematic analysis and found that participants made sense of futures post-COVID in three main ways. On the dystopic end, we identified a theme of meaning-making that we call everyday chaos. In this theme, the narrative is an end-of-the-world style narrative, which describes a broken and recovering world at the same time. Although sometimes downplayed, the focus is on the ruin COVID has left behind. App notifications, social media, technology, they all play a role in maintaining this sense of chaos. Notably, a lot of paranoia and distrust in the government, borderline conspiracy theory characterize these stories that see a post-COVID future as something very negative. To the positive or utopian end, we found narratives of reclaiming bond with nature in a post-COVID world that has overcome the pandemic. These narratives, that we call back to basics, couched somewhat in uncertainty and hesitancy, a hark back to simpler times, back to nature and necessities, going back to essential relationships and a socially enhanced world facilitated in part by technology. Resting between these utopian and dystopian narratives, a theme that we identified in business as usual. In this theme, the stories written by participants bear a sense of getting back to normal with COVID that is sometimes or often ignored or downplayed, where getting back to normal is often negotiated through a new set of social practices. For instance, in these stories, the world has adapted to the new normal, particularly through changed working practices, such as remote working, social distancing, and whatnot. But in any event, the vibe is the one of business as usual. No big deal that we have COVID. Life is just going to carry on. Deliberate ambiguity is a common tactic in story completion research in finding how participants fill in the blanks. While our deliberate ambiguity of a post-COVID future was meant to give participants freedom in envisioning such a future, it emerged as problematic as their stories mostly struggled with identifying a future, and especially one that differs or diverge from the status quo. These results reflect how difficult it was for our participants to clearly identify what is meant by future when confronted with dramatic events like COVID-19, as well as how far in time this hypothetical post-COVID future may or will be. Consequently, the stories mostly made sense of futures post-COVID as a persisting present, which Sabransky describes as the impasse of the present in speculative research. And we directly quote him, "The future has never been more present, yet the present keeps prolonging itself, insisting with its own order of continuity on a time that does not quite seem to pass." We don't think that's a sentence that fits better than this quote from Sabransky to describe the vibe of the results of our speculative research. While creating the initial gamified story completion method was relatively straightforward with Studycrafter, it took the research team 2 months of iteration to feel satisfied with the final product. This was because we felt that the gamified story completion method was never gamey enough. However, to avoid introducing biases, we were at the same time limited in our freedom to design engaging gameplay. This lesson learned poses interesting methodological challenge for researchers who are interested in replicating or rather extending this kind of studies. And we suggest that they continue experimenting to identify potential design trade-offs that well balance gamification and social constructionist research. Thank you for listening to our presentation, and we hope you will enjoy the rest of this 2021.